It's Tuesday, November 28, 2023. I'm Crash Waggish Connell.
I need to look that up. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, Julaine. Julaine used those big words. I got to look that up. So, Mary Danielsen is back in the studio with a fresh new podcast.
100% natural, no preservatives. We are here today to talk to Julaine Appling. She's back with us. She's got her finger on the pulse of several issues of importance to Wisconsin and the nation. Of course, so goes one state, so goes the nation, it seems these days. I have a scripture verse to open with today, and we're going to pray and welcome Julaine. I'll tell you a little bit about her if you're not aware of who she is, and then we're going to jump in. So my scripture this morning is Psalm 66, 1-4. Make a joyful shout to God, all the earth. Sing out the honor of his name. Make his praise glorious. Say to God, how awesome are your works. Through the greatness of your power, your enemies shall submit themselves to you. All the earth shall worship you and sing praises to you. They shall sing praises to your name. Selah. Pray with me this morning. Lord, we come before you with really nothing of our own, but we ask that you would fill us with your Spirit today so that we can serve you and serve others in a way that glorifies you and pleases you, Lord. Thank you that you equip us with everything that we need for life and godliness. We lift up those who are sick and struggling, and we pray for a healing touch on their lives. We lift up our guest, Julaine, and her loved ones. Just, Lord, to ask you for wisdom for her, protection, continued grace to serve you in any capacity that you have called her to. Thank you for her witness and labors for your kingdom. And we ask this in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Again, Julaine Appling is back with us. She's president of Wisconsin Family Council and Wisconsin Family Action. During the nearly 10 years she spent in the classroom in Wisconsin, she taught on the junior high, high school, and college levels. Special areas were history, government, English, and education courses. She was the administrator of a private school as well. In 1997, she came to work at the Wisconsin Family Council as director of office operations, and the following year became executive director of the WFC. And the sites are wifamilycouncil.org and wifamilyaction.org. Julaine, welcome back to Stand Up.
Well, thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. Good to be with you folks again. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving.
Yes. I have the residue of what I did on Thanksgiving, which is on the couch with many blankets, Kleenex, aspirin, you name it. But such is life in the great white north. It wouldn't be fall without a head cold or whatever that was we had. I think the flu. So anyway, but here, vertical today, feeling much better. And I know we want to jump in and talk about something we haven't had a chance to connect on, and that is the Ohio abortion referendum. And I'm glad we have a chance to review this because it's so easy to move from election to election and forget what happened, and even more so to follow up or connect any dots later on. So, Julaine, if you would just help us out here by telling us what actually happened, refresh our memories
Sure.
on this constitutional amendment.
Okay. Well, first of all, glad you're on the upswing on whatever it is you've been dealing with, Mary.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So lots of stuff going around right now.
Yeah, there is.
Look, in early November, a number of states had different referenda on it. Some states actually had voting for governors and things like that. But Ohio's was interesting because this was, Ohio's a red state. It's been reliably red for, over a decade, obviously, maybe 2-3 decades, maybe for even longer than that. But so this one was a little bit, this referendum that they had stung maybe a little bit more than some of the others, where we maybe thought that an abortion referendum would sail through because it's a blue state.
Mm-hmm.
But Ohio had a referendum on the ballot that would put a right to abortion in their state constitution. And I think everybody probably understands when you do that, when you put something in a state constitution, you're ensconcing it in the highest level of the law that you have. Just as our U.S. Supreme Court is the highest law of the land, so our state constitutions are the highest law of the land. And so this was a hotly debated and issue throughout the campaign. There was a lot of money spent by those wanting to have the so-called right and so-called freedom to intentionally kill an unborn baby. They spent millions and millions of dollars, Mary, on this to try to get people to vote yes. And there was an incredible pro-life effort, a coalition that worked tirelessly with far less funding to push the message out that this was a very dangerous amendment, that it was going to do a lot more than just make abortion a right in the Constitution. And Ohio, it's so new in Ohio that we haven't seen all of the things that are going to come. But one of the things they said was, look at what happened in Michigan when they were doing the campaign. Michigan put a right to abortion in their constitution. And when they were doing that, they said, oh, no, we won't touch any of the regulations that are on the books, like parents' rights, 24-hour notice, and like we have here, ultrasound requirement or a 20-week ban. We won't touch those. Well, it was, the ink was hardly dry on the amendment there to the Michigan Constitution when all of a sudden the legislature started passing those kinds of laws to undo those regulations.
Wow.
So Ohio was trying to warn people, but unfortunately, earlier this month when the vote happened on the first Tuesday in November, the people of Ohio said, we want the so-called right, the so-called freedom to intentionally kill an unborn child. And Mary, my peer there, Aaron Bear, was an important leader in the pro-life coalition that was working to defeat this, because this is one that needed to be defeated. And he's done a little bit of an analysis on what happened. And full disclosure, I asked him if I could share some of it. And one of the things that they found when they were doing what we call it a postmortem, was that 47.5% of the people who voted believed life begins at conception. 47.5. So, and by the way, the amendment failed 55-45. All right. Excuse me, the amendment did not fail. The amendment passed 55-45. Sorry about that. Okay. So 47.5% of those who voted said they agreed that life begins at conception. But here's the other part. 61% of them said that the government shouldn't get in between a woman and her doctor. So, okay, so what you're seeing here, Mary, is a couple things. Messaging matters. Yeah. Okay. Number two, 50 years of people in our country being told that the right to intentionally killing an unborn child is a right, and it's part of our inherent freedoms, is very hard to undo in a year and a half. All right, since Dobbs was handed down in June of 2024. Right. There was one other piece of information that came out that I believe it was 24% of people who identified as evangelicals voted for the amendment. 24%. Wow. That to me is just heartbreaking. Yeah. Heartbreaking. Because what it means is even our churches are not communicating the truth that at the moment of conception, a human being, a person stamped with the image of our incredible Creator God, that hasn't been communicated clearly to people so that they understand, whether it's through rape or incest or however the conception happens, at that very moment of fertilization, that's a human being in the image of God and deserves protection. So to summarize this was the seventh amendment to a state constitution in the last year, because we had them in November of 2022. I don't think we had any in the spring, but we did this fall in 2023. Seventh one that either there were two types. There were amendments that were going to legalize abortion in the state constitution, and then there were some amendments that were going to prohibit abortion, and that was going to be in their state constitution. Life lost on all 7.
Wow. Wow.
Life lost on all 7. So we as Christians have an incredible messaging opportunity. I'm not going to call it a challenge because it really is an opportunity. We need to help the people in the pews next to us or in the chairs, however your service is set up, or in your Bible studies, or in your small groups, or whatever it is, to understand the biblical truth of this issue. This is a basic worldview issue.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if evangelicals can't get it right, Mary, what from a human perspective, what hope do we have?
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. And it's so ironic that people say, well, this is a right. This is, reproductive rights that we are, this is a right. And yet we need the permission of the Democrats and the progressives to make it a right. Women need the Democrats to make it possible for them to do this. It's the strangest thing. One key issue here, there's an article from the AP. It says Ohio voters enshrine abortion access in Constitution in latest statewide. Enshrine, that's just horribly offensive. But it says here the key issue, Democrats got more evidence that they can win races centered on the national debate over abortion. How pragmatic is that? So they just got a go-ahead, that this is what wins races for them. And it just kind of makes you ill. But I think even though it's enshrined in these constitutions, Julaine, it's not really the end of the conversation, is it? Because they make it sound like it's signed, sealed, and delivered, and the door is slammed shut on any other alternatives. It's not the end of the conversation, though, is it?
It's not the end of the conversation, and it's not the end of the way that our elections have to go either.
Right.
But we who are pro-life have to get messaging out there that talks about the reality, the biological reality, that life begins at the moment of conception. And look, it's not always easy to have these discussions. It's not always easy to communicate that kind of truth. We have to have people who have survived abortions talk about, really, we have to have those that somehow survived abortion start talking about it. We need people who were born as a result of a rape or an incest to talk about how glad they are that their mother chose life in spite of a horribly difficult situation. We need people who have experienced going into one of these clinics and saying, this doesn't feel right, and stepping back out and saying, I've got to think this through more. I've got to make a better choice. I need to have more facts. We need those people to begin speaking out as well. We need people to begin understand. And I'm going to go back to this. See, enshrining gives this, when you use that word, that's kind of like the highest level of word you could use.
Right.
Right? So, because what it says to people, this is a right that is so important, we have to give it the highest level of commendation. And we have to break through that. No, there is no constitutional right anywhere inherent to kill an unborn baby, to kill a human person. And we have allowed this talk of right and freedom to usurp truth, in a sense, in the culture, and we need to do what we can to wrest that back. It may not happen overnight, Mary, but we have to keep working at it. In America, as you well know, and all of your team there at Q90 knows, when you use the word right and freedom in America, that resonates.
It does.
Right? Those terms resonate. We value our freedom. We value our rights. But there are some rights that are inherent, that are inalienable, to use the word in our Declaration of our Declaration of Independence. An inalienable right. And life from the Creator God is one of them. And no one has the right to destroy that life. The other thing I'll quickly mention is here in Wisconsin, we have this, we have our ban, our pre-Roe ban on the books.
Right.
And it should be being enforced now, but of course Planned Parenthood in Milwaukee and Madison have taken it upon themselves to break the law, think they're above the law, to ignore the rule of law and begin doing abortions, even though we have no decision on the lawsuit. All right, but one of the things that we've seen happen in this last year and a half here is we have the pro-abortion people convincing the medical people that they can't help women who are having a miscarriage, or they can't help women that are in an ectopic pregnancy situation. Those aren't abortions.
Right.
Those are not abortions at all. The medical field unfortunately uses the term spontaneous abortion for
Right.
for a miscarriage,
Yeah,
right?
they do.
So people get confused. I had a lady text me behind the scenes not quite a year ago and said, "I had a miscarriage. Did that mean I killed my baby?" Oh my goodness, my heart broke for her.
Yeah.
But see, the pro-abortion people are so aggressive on this, so they get the medical people out there talking about it, saying our law prevents us from even helping a woman. No, 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 no. Our law does not prevent that.
Wow.
So we have a bill out there to clarify that. We'll see if it gets to the governor's desk. I'm sure he'll veto it, but we have to keep trying on those things. So I wanted people to know about what's going on. I don't want people to be discouraged. We need to work hard. We need to help candidates learn how to message this and not run away from it.
Yeah.
One of the things that happens is candidates that are otherwise conservative get told by their consultants and advisors, oh, don't talk about it. So here you have the Democrats, just as you mentioned, Mary, using the intentional killing of an unborn child to win a political race.
Yeah.
How low can you go?
Yeah. It's sick.
How low can you go?
It's absolutely sick. Yeah.
It is. We're better than that. I like to think we're better than that anyway.
Wow. Wow. It's just now. We said that this is Ohio is the 7th state where voters decided to protect access. Do you know of any? Because this is going to continue on this trajectory is for the foreseeable future, of course, until something turns around. Are there any more that you know of coming up in 2024?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know of 2, Florida and Arizona.
Okay.
And by the way, those are so Florida is what color, Mary?
Yeah.
Red, right? I mean, really, really red.
Yeah. Bright red.
And Arizona's kind of like us. They're more red than we are right now. They're a little purple, but they're tinged more red. But they have one on there, and I think there are a couple of other states as well. I suspect there'll be 4 or 5 states that have that, some form of that, either to quote enshrine the right to an abortion or to ban abortion or prohibit abortion in their state. Look, when you get a few wins like this under your belt, it emboldens everybody, right?
Yes.
So,
yeah. Wow. You're listening to Stand Up for the Truth. My name is Mary Danielsen. We're talking to Julaine Appling, Wisconsin Family Council with familycouncil.org. And it's a good chance to mention here that their 2023-24 legislative directory download is available on that website if you want to contact your representatives and find out where they stand on things like this. This is a great thing. You just put your name and your email address in. It comes into your email box, and you can download that in case you want to. So it's a great resource to be able to get a hold of those who can have an effect on these things. So Julaine Appling with us today. So, Julaine, that's definitely worth looking into. I want to go on to this young woman who is suing UW docs for violating informed consent regarding regarding her trans surgery. And here's the headline. Woman says UW doctors perform gender-altering surgeries without proper consent. Wisconsin has a bill, I do believe, Julaine, that transgender procedures are illegal for those under 18. But tell us a little bit about this story. What happened? She's 23. She had her uterus and breasts removed at UW Hospital. She had a self-diagnosis of gender dysphoria. You know the drill and all that stuff. It was, she said, was not confirmed by a doctor. And so now she's suing, alleging that they operated on her without proper informed consent. I don't even know what that means anymore. Julaine, break this down for us.
Well, yeah, I find this case fascinating, Mary, and I'm glad we have one. This woman is not a minor, and she was not a minor when she had these procedures.
Okay.
I want to make sure everyone listening knows that, because the bill you're referring to is the bill we call the Help Not Harm Bill,
Okay.
which would prohibit medical personnel from performing surgeries or prescribing cross-sex hormones or puberty blockers for minors. Now, that has passed in the Assembly and the Senate, but has not yet gone to the governor. Unfortunately, I pretty sure in fact, he's already come out and said, and when it reaches his desk, he will veto it. And that's on him. That's not on our legislature. So there are a number of states that have passed these kinds of measures to protect minors. But what I think is interesting about this one is the fact that she was not a minor, but as a 23-year-old, looking back over, I think she was 19 and 20 or 21 when she had those surgeries, she understands that when she had those surgeries, the medical personnel involved with her did not give her enough information for her to be able to make what we would consider a decision fully informed. For instance, in one article I read, she said no one told her that she would never be able to have a baby.
Wow.
Now, that's a pretty significant piece of information for a doctor, a surgeon, to leave out when you are talking about a 19 or 21-year-old who are entering, the time when we expect them to be in the very best childbearing years. And so she has sued her doctors at the UW for not giving her enough information. And there are a couple of other things that allegations she's made against the doctors as well. But I think the informed consent is incredibly important because if you notice, even in that article that you just referred to, she was self-diagnosed.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So she didn't go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and talk about this issue. She was dealing with gender confusion, trying to somehow bring into sync her emotions with her biology. And by the way, we know that left alone, somewhere between, and I'm going to give quite a spread here because I see so many numbers, but somewhere between 88 and 95% of people, young people in particular, who are struggling with gender confusion, if left alone, will eventually come to understand and accept and be fine with their biological sex. But instead, medical personnel and, so often even well-intentioned parents are stepping in here, and their children and young adults, if you will, are making decisions that are absolutely life-altering.
Yeah.
You have a 23-year-old who can never have children, has her body mutilated, and now realizes she accepts being female. This is a case that will be very, very interesting to see how this works through our courts here.
Yeah.
Now, there may be others across the country where similar cases have been brought. I don't know of them. That does not mean they're not out there. I haven't heard about them. So I'm glad this case is here. At some point, this is going to go before our state Supreme Court. It's going to be very interesting to watch this as it goes through there. But here's one thing I'll say. I think this young woman is incredibly brave. Yeah. Don't you, Mary?
Yeah.
Don't you believe she's brave to bring this lawsuit?
Yes.
Who goes up against a UW medical?
Yes. Agreed.
Or the hospital,
Right. And she said, the article says she had a series of traumatizing events in her childhood home, in her home life. Her upbringing was very, very difficult. So she had anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder to begin with. And so she diagnosed herself. And then she was at age 17, she was given testosterone in Chicago. And it, to not treat what actually happened, but to make this, what she decided then after that, and is now regretting, the solution for the problem is something very unique to this time that we're living in. People have been going through traumatizing events as children for a very, very long time, unfortunately, at the hands of adults. It's despicable. But nevertheless, now they're thinking that, I must be the wrong gender. And I'm thinking, wow, whoever proposed that that's the answer to something completely, relatively unrelated to what you're saying. And I guess that's what breaks my heart, is what it is a symptom of something. But I'm glad to see it going to the court.
Well, it is a symptom of something. And, boy, the fall, right? The depravity of
Yeah.
of mankind. And
Right.
so what often happens in these situations is a child is abused by male or female or whatever, and they say, well, the answer to that is to be the opposite of what that of who
Right.
I am.
Right.
And so I think this is one of the most significant strikes against the creative order that there is. The opening chapters of the book of beginnings, Genesis, God's holy, inerrant word, tells us very clearly that God created male and female. That's it. He created them with reproductive capability. And incredibly, what we talk about here is, as we talked about in the previous segment, the uniqueness of the reproductive capability of male and female as humans is that results in a human being stamped with the image of God. Yeah. The animal kingdom reproduces, but their offspring are not stamped with the image of God. Mm-hmm. And that's why Scripture says that his crowning creative act, God's crowning creative act, is humanity. We were made just a little lower than the angels. And so when people start, and I believe the devil's at the heart of this, proposing this idea that everything will be okay if you just change your sex, because when you were when you were born in the wrong body.
Yeah.
See, that's saying God made a mistake. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we have Christian young people believing that somehow we serve a malevolent God who makes mistakes, or else is just outright mean, mm-hmm. and traps a man in a woman's body or a woman in a man's body, mm-hmm. and then sits back and chortles and says, "Now try to get out."
Yeah, good luck with that.
That's not our
right.
God.
Right.
And so we have the hopelessness and the despair in our culture today is very real. We talk about mental health, and these are part of it, because we have, as you said, we've looked at the symptoms and come up with the wrong cause, and therefore we have the wrong treatment.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I young people like this, they need our prayers. They've had a very rough start in life, and the trajectory of their life has been now this one of sorrow and suffering and depression, and it's very, very heartbreaking. And I encourage people to pray for this young woman, pray for this suit, and see what God can do, because the Lord can turn her life around. He's the only one who can turn her life around at this point. But it really does break my heart that someone would go through such trauma. And adults who are supposed to be trustworthy, people in these professions are supposed to be trustworthy, and it's just another smackdown on the road of life. So I would encourage people to pray for this young woman and the outcome of this lawsuit. Is there a time frame on it, Julaine? We have to take a break in a second here, but do you know how long this is going to go?
No, there's no time frame. No, it'll have to work its way through the system.
Yeah, and that could take, who knows how long that could take. But yeah. Wow. All right. This is Mary Danielsen. We're talking to Julaine Appling today, Wisconsin Family Council, Wisconsin Family Action, and we have quite a few things that we still want to discuss in the second half. So far, we've talked about the Ohio abortion referendum analysis and this case, woman suing UW Docs. We want to talk about school choice lawsuit. We want an update on the Wisconsin Family Council office's firebombing 18 months ago. I can't believe we've been talking about it that long. And we want to talk about education in general. The DPI issued state report cards on the public schools. The fox is still guarding the hen house. On that, so we want to talk about mediocrity in education, such as it is. We want to talk about that satanic temple tree in Ashwaubenon, how bizarre that is, and a few other things. There's a primary election in February. So we're going to be absent here for 2 minutes. We're going to hear from our sponsors, and then we are going to come back with more from Julaine Appling. Stay with us.
Feedback, questions, and topic suggestions are always appreciated. Email us at comments@standupforthetruth.com.
And welcome back to Stand Up for the Truth. Praying that my voice holds out for the second half. We have Julaine Appling with FamilyCouncil.org, with FamilyAction.org, and she is just she's a statewide treasure here because she is just up on so many things that affect our lives. And the next thing, Julaine, I want to talk about is school choice is under attack in Wisconsin. The parental choice program began in 1990, just with the city of Milwaukee, but has expanded over the years. And there's a challenge to the state Supreme Court. Asked the court to shut down the school choice program within the next year. Julaine, what is Wisconsin's school choice program, and why in the world do they want to shut it down unless it has to do with tax money? I don't know. Tell us about that.
Well, this is one of my favorite things to talk about because I think it's one of the best things that's happened in education in Wisconsin. But I'm going to give people just a little bit of history, and this is for people whether they live in Wisconsin or not, because we were the first state to have what we call a parental choice program, and in the vernacular we call it our voucher program.
Right. Okay.
Where the money truly follows the child. This was initiated back in the 1990s with an African-American state legislator from Milwaukee. Her name was Annette Polly Williams. And she saw what was happening to the education of her people in our largest city and said, something's got to be done about that. So she put together a wonderful bill that would allow parents to receive a voucher from the state made payable to a private school of the parent that has applied and gone through all the rigmarole you have to do to be able to accept voucher students and accept them into the school so that their child could get the very best education possible. So it's withstood court challenges all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, I believe, but I know at least at the state level, religious schools are also able to be participants in that. So now for over 30 years, we've had people. And by the way, if originally it was just for the city of Milwaukee, then then under the Walker administration, it expanded beyond that out into Milwaukee County. Under the Walker administration, we added another program in Racine. And then the coup de grace on this was that under the Walker administration, they added a statewide program. The statewide, and this is largely right now for low-income families. They have to meet a certain threshold level relative to the poverty level. And to the most part, and there's a cap, by the way. So like in my school district in Watertown, we can only have a certain percentage of the school-aged children in the voucher program. Okay. All right. So until 2025, then the cap's gone. So this has been incredibly successful. There's tens of thousands of students. I think it's over 60,000 students right now across Wisconsin who are in a school using a voucher. The vouchers are less than the average per pupil cost of education. The average per pupil cost of education in Wisconsin depends on what numbers you look at, but it's anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000. Probably closer to the 15 for in on average in Wisconsin. There isn't a voucher that is 15,000. The highest one right now for this year is a little over 12 for high school students. So this has been an incredibly helpful program, giving parents who would never be able to send their children to a school of their choice unless there was this voucher program. And what's happened is liberals hate it. They think the only good school is a public school. Right. The only school that should receive public money and taxpayer money at all ever is a public school. And by the way, if you ask the public sector, public educators, you always say you need more money. Could you tell me, please, how much more would make you happy?
Right.
And the only answer they can tell you is more.
That's right.
So here we have this program that's been in effect. All of the new parts were under the Walker administration, statewide in Racine, and a little expansion there in Milwaukee. But generally, the whole program. And, oh, by the way, there's a special needs program now too for the voucher program that was added under the Walker administration. So they have this brewery up in Minocqua that has a super PAC, and it's run by liberals, and they hate the voucher program. They hate it. So they filed a lawsuit last month claiming that it is constitutionally illegal for the voucher program to exist in Wisconsin because it is depriving public schools of money.
Wow.
I find this absolutely mind-boggling. Private schools figure out how to educate well. The vast majority of them educate students very well, right?
Yeah, right.
And they figure out how to do it on the money that they have available instead of going out and constantly asking for more.
Right.
But the public schools want to, they assume that taxpayers have very deep pockets and that they must give into this abyss of public education.
Right.
So this lawsuit has been filed directly with our state Supreme Court. Now, that's unusual. However, we're getting more and more of these happening, going directly to our Supreme Court in Wisconsin. And Mary, you know why. Because in August, our court flipped from conservative to liberal.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what they call a direct action petition. So they skip the district court or the county court. They skip going through the appellate and they go directly to the Supreme Court. And the reason, this is so important, and we want you to get rid of this program in this lawsuit before the school year of 2024. So you need to take it directly because we know it's going to end up with you anyway. Wow. Now, the Supreme Court has a right to say yes or no, they'll accept it. So far, the Supreme Court has not said anything relative to accepting this case or denying it. So it's just sitting out there for them to consider. But interestingly, Governor Evers last week, it's either last week or the week before, filed a brief with the Supreme Court saying, don't take this case.
Wow.
There's no emergency, and you are going to throw everything into turmoil if you take this case and proceed with it. Put it back at the district court and let it work its way through the normal court process. That was a stunner. Now, I will say this. Governor Evers is he is not inherently a fan of the voucher program, of any kind of school choice.
Sure.
But in the budget, he negotiated with the Republicans a deal that would increase the budget for public schools, also increasing the amount of the vouchers.
Oh.
And he signed off on it. He did not veto that. So he's got a little bit of a deal going there, that he got more money from the Republicans for his schools. So he gave some more to the voucher program. And I think at this point, he doesn't really want this whole thing messed with. Wow. So, wow, this is going to be fascinating to watch. I honestly hope the Supreme Court says no. First of all, I just want to explain. If we make, and by the way, this is not the first lawsuit. The legislative maps went directly to the Supreme Court. This went directly to the Supreme Court. There's another one out there, I believe, that also went directly to the Supreme Court. And if this is not a healthy pattern, our court system is designed to work from the remember, the Supreme Court is not a fact-finding court.
Right.
They deal with the facts that are established at the district court. So this is unsettling. And they're just doing it for political purposes because they know they've got a friendly court. And so they want to push I'm praying, I'm hoping that the justices on our state Supreme Court will actually understand some of these things and deny some of these going directly to them and say, look, you can file the court case, but you aren't starting here. If you want to do it, you got to go back to district court.
Wow. Very interesting and well worth watching. I'm still scratching my head over the Minocqua Brewing Company Super PAC.
I know.
What in the world? I did not expect to see something like that. They're the ones that want to destroy Wisconsin's choice program. I don't quite get that. I know there's probably more to it, but
there is, and I'm sure there is. But this guy has engaged in elections before he started, and anybody can start a super PAC. I mean, if you do it the way it needs to be done, and I think he's just trying to, as hard as he can to advance his liberal agenda.
Sure. Throw something at the wall, see if it sticks. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And so unfortunately, let me talk positively just for a minute about Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty has immediately jumped in, and they have actually asked to be interveners in it. Now, interveners in a lawsuit of this nature doesn't make them a direct party, but it's the next best thing. Yeah. Because then they can be engaged in filing briefs and all kinds of things that friends of the court or amici cannot be. So they've already made the case for asking the court, number one, don't take the case. But if you do take the case, then at least let us intervene in it.
Wow.
So
My goodness.
on behalf of, and they're representing parents who have kids in voucher schools,
Sure.
teachers that are involved with voucher schools, and other interested parties that are promoting educational freedom.
Okay. Very interesting. We need to keep our eyes on that, and I'm sure we'll have Julaine on again, and we'll keep an eye on this, how it's going. Julaine, I want to ask you about the firebombing case. You may not be able to say a lot about that, but there is a little bit of an update after 18 months here. What can you tell us about the latest on that?
Well, last Monday, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday, I think it was Monday, the U.S. Attorney's Office publicly filed a plea agreement in this case. So the individual that they arrested in March when he was getting on a plane in Boston with a one-way ticket to Guatemala, after they had matched his DNA to a half-eaten burrito in Madison.
Oh, right. Okay. Right.
It's like an NCIS story.
Yeah,
right?
it really is.
So he's been held in custody here in Wisconsin since they arrested him in March. He entered into a plea agreement. Now, a plea agreement just says basically, this is what I intend to do before the court. So that became public on last Monday. So this Friday is the court hearing in federal court in Madison. So this individual will be brought before the judge, and the assumption is that he will plead guilty at that time.
Okay.
So we have not made any kind of a formal statement about any of this. We will do so after the court hearing on the 1st, this Friday, at 1 o'clock at the federal courthouse in downtown Madison. But at least it's movement on this case. I can tell you that there are 2 other sets of DNA that they have found. They found at the scene at my office.
Yeah.
When my personal office was the one that they chose to firebomb. But so this case is not closed.
Okay.
Even if no matter how this part of it goes. So I think it's hopeful for people who are watching, not just here in Wisconsin, but around the country. We've been dismayed at how slowly these things have moved in finding the perpetrators against pro-life organizations, especially churches and pregnancy care centers. We were unique in that we're neither of those, but we are, a policy organization that's very open and forthright and public about our pro-life position. So, but we know it's been a long process for even our case to move forward. But I hope this is hopeful to the people who are watching these things around the country.
Right. And we'd ask people to continue to pray for the resolution, that the Lord would be glorified in this somehow. And just pray about this and see what happens. So thank you for that update on here. I want to talk about a gal named Randy Weingarten. She's the head of the AFT, that's the American Federation of Teachers, and it's one of the 2 largest teachers unions in the nation. Of course, the NEA is the largest. That's the one that gets all the press. But she's the head of the AFT. And these 2 unions are some of the largest political players in the nation. And she is a lesbian, and she recently made the news outlets, including Fox, with a question that gets my vote for the most tone-deaf question ever regarding homeschooling versus public schools, and the people responded by giving her an edumacation post-haste. Her question was, what's behind the increase in homeschooling? Well, the number one answer from conservatives, of course, was, you are, followed very closely by, look in the mirror, lady. Town hall columnist Phil Holloway questioned why she turned off comments to her posts, citing she was afraid of the responses. He said, you and the teachers' unions sent public schools into a death spiral from which they may never recover. Another conservative said she doesn't realize she's one of the greatest homeschooling advocates in American history. And DeSantis' office said the lack of introspection continues. She led the charge behind the prolonged school closures. She supported a strict mask mandate well past the height of COVID. National test results in reading and math are at their lowest level since the early 90s. Oh my goodness, Julaine! Like I said, the lack of self-awareness by the liberals never ceases to amaze me. What should we think about Randy Weingarten? And I mean, are the public schools in a death spiral, or is this just? I don't know. I just was so entertained by this.
Well, I would agree. Entertained is a good word for it. Look, she's as you said, she's an open lesbian. She's promoting that agenda. That's who she is, and they are very much self-deceived.
Yeah.
They do not understand. Seriously, I think so many of those people in the public sector do not understand what is happening in the culture at large. They're in their bubble. Yeah. They see everything in their little. They're in an echo chamber too, and you see and hear everything within that context. You don't understand what is happening, right. and it's self-deceived. My goodness, they're trouncing on parental rights. They're indoctrinating our kids. Their scores are going down. They're producing, they're young people who are not prepared to be productive citizens in our country. And then they scratch their heads and say, why would homeschool be increasing? Mm-hmm. And that is absolutely the epitome of their lack of awareness of what's happening. Yeah. They are so immersed in the darkness of their ideology. And it is a darkness. Mm-hmm. And that they cannot see the light of truth. Yeah. And so they look around and go, isn't that interesting? Yeah. Homeschooling. Wow. Yeah. Homeschooling.
Yeah. Why would anybody do that? Well, the number of homeschooled families went from 1.5 million children in 2019 to 2.7 million in 2023. And I, for one, am grateful. I mean, she's as clueless as the day is long, but so be it. Because I just feel that it was a great wake-up call for parents to realize what these masks and closures were doing to children. That was an incredible season of time where parents got more involved. And so I say, bring it on. Her lack of self-awareness is our great gain. And so I look at it in a little bit of a positive light, but when Fox had it on, it just got my attention. I thought it was hilarious. So anyway, also, the state schools have released report cards, and I love this. The state is grading itself. I mean, there's the sheer volume of data and endless spreadsheet pages about this will make your head explode. But Appleton and Madison, I read their reports. The schools, they meet expectations. Well, I don't know. Maybe the expectations for schools should be raised a little bit. Julaine, what do you think about these report cards? Because they really don't change anything. The report cards don't do anything if a school fails out, because Appleton didn't do that well. There's a couple of schools that came up as not meeting expectations, and Madison had one that too. So, but yet nothing ever changes. Am I getting that right, Julaine?
Well, I think you are, but with an exception, what changes is the DPI changes the rating scale.
Oh, there you go.
Well, and that's part of the problem here, because they had so many schools that were not at the level they needed them to be on those report cards. Mm-hmm. So they adjusted the percentages for, the scores, I should say, the range, for proficient or performing up to standards or whatever the ranges are. They just kept playing with them until they got more schools to be in the acceptable ranges.
Right.
And so, but what we know is test scores continue to fail or fall. And we have a literacy problem. We have a math and a reading problem that are very significant.
Yes.
And, the state legislature this year, I'm trying to think the status of this bill, but I think the governor may have signed. I don't know if the governor signed or not. But anyway, it was requiring schools to teach a phonics-based reading program.
Wow.
Well, because we're turning out non-readers. And so here you have the state. This is kind of like the fox guarding the hen house,
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
The state designs the model, designs the rubric for the grade card, for the scorecard or report card, sets the standards, and then goes out and measures the schools against it. And if the schools don't measure up, well, then let's just change what we're doing here and change how so it's just, I'll tell you where you should look for an honest report card. You should go to Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty and check out their school report card. They have done an honest look at it. And they don't keep messing around with all of the ranges and the scores. And they also often offer what they call an apples to apples apples to apples comparison of our voucher schools and the students in those voucher schools compared to their peers in the public schools. So, and because they've got good people on staff that know how to do those kinds of things, and it gives us a much more accurate picture of what's happening in education in our state. And by the way, I'm 99.9% sure I'm right on this. The largest single area that receives the vast amount of the largest amount of tax dollars is education in our state. We fund public education at an astronomical rate. And obviously, we also give money for higher education to the UW system.
Right.
That's our tax dollars. We have a right to know how our public schools are performing. What are they doing? They should be transparent. It should not be hard to get that kind of information.
Right.
We tried to make them more transparent. The governor vetoed that bill last session. But it shouldn't be a secret, and it shouldn't be take a magician or a wizard
Yes.
to figure out how much we're spending and what kind of product we're getting. That's
Yes.
called return on investment, and we're all entitled to it.
Absolutely, and you'd think there'd be some independent way to get a good measure of how the schools are doing. I mean, that'd be the day that we actually find out that an independent company went through and did all this and cleaned all this up. I think we'd be in for a shock. But I also found it was interesting with the Appleton report, the charter schools, the top 4 schools in Appleton are charter schools. So I thought that was interesting, and none of the public schools measured as close
Yeah.
as they did. So
Well, that's the way it goes. I mean,
Yeah.
those are the kinds of schools. Now, charter school, there's 2 types of charter schools in Wisconsin. There are independent charter schools, and there are charter schools that are tied to the public school. So
Okay,
those
right.
are, by the way, the independent charter schools are also part of that lawsuit that we just talked about.
Oh.
They want to get rid of those too.
Oh, okay. Wow. Didn't know that.
They don't, Mary, they don't believe there's any good school other than a public school. That's hard for you and me to
Yeah,
understand
it
because
is.
that's such narrow thinking.
Right. Wow. So very interesting to see, and parents they have decisions to make more so than ever. And it's a difficult one, should we homeschool, which I actually think is the best choice. But everybody has to do what the Lord is showing them to do for their families. And so we continue to lift up our families and parents and all the decisions they have to make. There's a primary. I know we don't have a lot of time left. And so, Julaine, I want to give you the last couple minutes here to talk about what you want to talk about. There's a spring primary election in February, just floating that out there so people understand. Is there anything that we should be looking at with that coming up around the bend in 80 days or so?
Okay, number one, we don't have any statewide election on our ballot this
Okay.
year. So there would not be any DPI, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, or there's no judicial Supreme Court race this year. So if you have a primary, it would be for like mayor or city council or village or town board
Okay.
or school board or something like that. And the best way to find out about that would be to, at some point, right now it's too early, but at myvote.wi.gov will let you know whether or not you will have a primary. You can look for that probably. Well, candidates have to declare that they're running by the first Monday in January. Okay. So I'm guessing it will be the second, because it'll probably be Tuesday since January 1st is a Monday this year. But so we don't. But I wondered, Mary, did you want to talk about that little Ashwaubenon flare up?
Yes, we can certainly talk about that. You're talking about the Satanic Temple's tree inclusion. Yeah, the Wisconsin Christmas Tree Festival. There's 66 decorated trees at the National Railroad Museum, which is a wonderful place. I've been there. But now we have the museum is facing some backlash after its annual Christmas Tree Festival included some controversial entries this year with the satanic tree with the snake around the bottom. What in the world, Julaine?
It's indicative of our culture. Yeah. I know the CEO of the museum said, we think it's an educational opportunity. I'm quoting her on that. And she said that the museum doesn't discriminate. And I understand that. Now, the museum does not receive tax dollars, but they do receive federal money through grants.
Okay.
So could I just remind the museum that's tax dollars? Because no unit of government has a dime to grant, to spend, to give anyway without the taxpayers supplying it. That's just a reality. But I find this fascinating, Mary. I think what what's happened here is that they have transgender trees there. They have this satanic tree there. Those trees don't represent anything about the holiday that brings about this festival of trees. And so I find them to be very, very inappropriate.
Yes.
But in a freedom of religion country, where do you draw that line?
Right.
Where do you say you can do this, but you can't do that? We find that very difficult to do.
Yes.
So I think the losers in this, the losers are the families that would love to take their children to this beautiful museum to see these incredible trains and enjoy the trees that are not offensive.
Right. Right.
And they're going to have to either say, explain it all or not go. They're the losers.
And is it a target against Christianity? I would say absolutely.
Sure it is.
It's offensive to Christians, and it's a double standard. You couldn't do that with other faiths. But again, Christianity is always, in the sight of these people who want to take shots at it. Julaine, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll have you on again. I guess 2024 is probably the next time we'll talk to you. So have a great Christmas season, and thank you so much.
Thank you all. Merry Christmas to you, and God bless.
God bless you, dear. All right. Another great hour with Julaine. There's just so much we can always cover. This week we also have, my voice is going, so this is perfect timing. JB this week, John Haller this week. Tomorrow is a replay, and so we invite you to stay with us the rest of the week for some great programs. Again, all through December, we got some great, fresh podcasts.